Now, whether it succeeds in having the Clintons act unethically, there are too many levels of... All I got to say is read the Uranium One shit. Read articles about it. Don't believe us. Believe just... Well, don't... Just read some fucking articles about it. It's complicated. It is
I get to talk now.
All right.
You got to talk now.
Fine,
I'm going to talk.
Fine.
It's actually not complicated at all. Huge amount of money went to the Clinton Foundation from the Russians. Hillary Clinton voted to give our uranium, 20% of it, to the Russians.
There's two things.
No, you said you wouldn't let me.
No, hold on. Because you say these things over and over again. Hillary Clinton claims that she never, that it wasn't under her, that
she could have vetoed. Even if there were 9 other people that voted with her?
But she claims she never voted on the thing, that it wasn't under, that she doesn't...
Yeah, she had to give the approval. She had to.
She
had to. She had no choice.
And it's not 20% of our uranium.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Not, it's the U.S. provides 8% of its own uranium through domestic mining. 20% of the 8%, which is 1.6%, was sold to Roscom, but Roscom, by law, was not allowed to remove this 1.
And I told you they removed it anyway. They broke the law.
That's debatable.
No, it's been proven. They broke the law. And it is 20%. We only use 8% of our own, but it's 20% of our holdings. That's what we've got in this country.
No,
they got control of 20% of it. It is, don't screw around with the math. We may only use 8% of our own and get the other 92% from the world, but 20% of what's in our earth is what Russia got control over.
Yeah, but it's 20% of 8% of what we use.
But it's 20% of what we've got, not what we use. That's our 20%. That's America's 20%. Now, he interrupted me. It's very simple. For a year now, Rick's been telling me, well, the Russians gave the foundation the money. Hillary voted for them to get this uranium. But we have no connection. Who knows why she voted for that? It's just circumstantial, says Rick. Turns out, actually no. We have an informant who risked his life as a deep cover guy in the Russian industry who says, I know why she voted that way, because she was getting bribed. And I know that because the Russians told him that they were bribing her. And that's an FBI informant who has not been discredited. So now we know who got the money, we know what she gave in return, and we know that she was bribed because this FBI informant said so. Now that's not enough to convince Rick Rosner.
All right, here.
Rick Rosner can't believe it. It's incomprehensible to him.
So
it's a fantasy. It never happened. Right, Rick? You still don't believe it. Nothing can get through.
Because I read
no amount of evidence will convince you.
It's not evidence.
If Rosatom came here and said, look, here's the videotape. We gave her the money.
All right.
Nothing will help. You're so deeply invested in not believing this that no amount of evidence will change your mind.
So, Lance is a guy who's devoted his life to becoming one of the best painters. I'm not going to touch the painting in the world. Look at this painting. It's good. I'm a guy who sits at home and tweets in a towel, an unemployed guy. Don't listen to a guy who's a painter or a guy who tweets in a towel or sometimes a stinky bathrobe. Go on the internet. Read about Uranium One. It's a fairly complicated situation with all sorts of allegations flying back and forth. Read about Uranium One and decide for yourself.
Do you know who the FBI director was during that time?
It wasn't a James somebody?
It was Mueller.
Okay.
And Mueller did not stop the deal from going through, even though his own FBI informant told him that the Russians were bribing Americans, extorting from them, and aiding the Iranians with their nuclear development against all of our policies. Mueller let it go through. And by the way, this memo,
Which one, the Democratic one or the Republican one?
well, the one that says that the FBI, that Hillary Clinton bought a warrant so that the FBI could surveil her political opponent, Donald Trump, that warrant, that operation had to be reported to the president, Obama. And the reason we know that is because Strzok and Page admitted it in one of their texts. And furthermore, whenever an operation of that level takes place, the president has to be informed of it in his daily intelligence briefings. So not only did Hillary pay $12 million to buy a warrant to surveil her political opponent, but Obama knew about it, and not only did we know he had to know about it, but we've got text from Strzok and Page admitting that he knew about it. Weasel your way out of that one, Rick Rosner.
Read about it. Read about the whole deal on your own.
Well, listen to
Don't
those
trust
facts.
a painter.
He's got facts. He's got facts. He's got facts. Listen to those facts, Rick.
Just because I'm not as yelly as Lance, you don't have to believe
I'll
Lance.
say it very quietly.
Just because Lance listens to 60 hours a week of conservative podcasts.
And is well informed. Is anything I said a lie?
Yeah.
What did I lie about, Rick? I'll say it very quietly. What did I lie about?
Well, the $12 million going to the Russians.
Well, no, it went to Fusion GPS.
Yeah, so.
You can look that up right now. They got $12 million from the Clinton campaign. Democratic National Committee.
You get mad when I say that the Fusion GPS was first hired by the Republicans and.
Did Hillary Clinton give $12 million to Fusion
I guess you've
GPS?
said it enough times.
Well, then why am I lying?
Well, you just cherry pick the facts.
Well, isn't that kind of important, considering that the warrant was based on their results?
Well, you said you knew that Trump was involved in all these hinky deals, even without reading the dossier.
I knew that Trump sold real estate to Russians.
Yeah.
That's all I know.
Okay. And so it's common knowledge that Trump had all these real estate transactions.
But he had real estate transactions all over New York and Florida.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that he didn't have real estate transactions with the Russians.
No, he did. I'm sure he did.
Yeah.
So what's the problem?
So you don't need a dossier to tell you that.
But that's not what was in the dossier. I read the dossier. That was part of it, but that's not why they investigated him. That's not why they surveilled him.
So wait, so it's in the dossier, and they investigate him because of the dossier, but that's not why they investigated him.
No, most of the dossier was based on a meeting with his lawyer, a lawyer named Cohen, that was supposed to have taken place between Russian intelligence and Cohen, working for Trump in the Czech Republic. The meeting didn't take place because Cohen wasn't in the Czech Republic at the time and never has been there.
So where does Carter Page come in?
Carter Page was an advisor to the Trump campaign for a few months. He was let go, and Carter Page actually worked for the FBI getting Russian spies convicted.
And was also under surveillance since 2013.
No. He was under surveillance because he had business in Russia, and he ended up working for the FBI to help them convict Russian spies in the United States. That was the last thing Carter Page did, and that, Rick, is why Carter Page is free right now and not under any indictment.
So,
or
read about this stuff on your own.
Well, wasn't my explanation valid?
No, not really.
And the reason they needed Carter Page was because, according to the FISA rules, if somebody speaks about someone else on the phone, that gives the FBI a way of surveilling anyone he talks to or talks about. That's the rule. So if they could get Carter Page, they could get anyone in the Trump campaign that he spoke to on the phone. That's why they wanted to surveil him. That's why they wanted the warrant. Because if he mentioned Trump or he spoke to somebody that was working with Trump, the FBI could then surveil Trump.
Okay. Now let's move on, because
So
people have heard.
if
Go
Trump
ahead.
takes credit for the stock market being so great, now with the volatility, should Trump take credit for that too?
All right, so the last couple of weeks, the stock market, which had gone up, the Dow, which had gone up 7,000 points under Trump, after going up 12,000 or so under Obama, has dropped 3,000 points. And on the days that it dropped, Trump, who often kind of brags about the stock market, was quiet. I mean, which actually kind of makes sense. I mean, Trump being Trump, he's not going to say, you know, the stock market does this stuff, it'll be okay. But actually, I kind of think that, yeah, the stock market does do this stuff, and it probably will be kind of okay for a while. What Trump did tweet is, we got mad at the stock market. He did tweet, he said that in the old days, good news would make the stock market go up. Now good news makes the stock market go down. And while that sounds nonsensical and babyish, the part about good news making the stock market go down is actually, according to what I've read and seen, is actually kind of true. Because the way it works is that the economy, at least according to what the stock market looks for, is pretty good. Unemployment is super low. You just had a tax cut, stock market moving way up, and that makes the Fed want to raise interest rates to cool down the economy so it doesn't move too fast. And so what happened these past couple of weeks is people saw the economy looking really good, and then they got nervous that the Fed is going to raise interest rates 4 times maybe in 2018 rather than 3 times. And there was a freak out plus algorithmic trading that made the stock market crash or correct. And everybody on CNBC and, you know, all these financial people, Jim Cramer and Mr. Wonderful from Shark Tank, who's on, anyway, all these people are saying, no, this is no big deal. It's just a correction. It's not the beginning of a recession. So, you know, what are you going to do? I can't, you can't really fault Trump for the stock market crashing for a few days. You can say, yeah, he's kind of a baby for the way he tweets, but that's not his economic policy. That's just him being an idiot on Twitter. Lance?
I can't argue with that.
I mean, yeah.
I mean, my general, I don't know a goddamn thing about stocks. It's just that I've already seen it beginning to correct itself, which is what I would have expected, because the stock market always goes back up again. Its trajectory is always up, even though it has corrections. I'm not concerned about it either way.
So.
But wait, by the way, overall the stock market has still gone up under Trump.
Yeah.
Which is what, frankly, it does. It goes up, even though it goes down a little bit, it always ends up going back up.
Well, the stock market spends more time not in a recession than in recession. It does generally go up over time.
Okay.
So since we're talking about scary stuff, we want to talk about scary movies. Your favorite scary movie. I don't know if it's scary so much, but Lance was talking about Machete. Do you want to comment on Machete, Lance?
Machete is the greatest film ever produced. It's a film with Danny Trejo, is it? And there's a scene with Jessica Alba naked in the shower. There's also a scene where Danny Trejo and Jessica Alba kiss, and Danny Trejo cuts off a lot of people's heads. You can't argue with that kind of quality.
Should we talk about our favorite movies?
Yeah.
Mine used to be Chinatown. But that movie's more than 40 years old now, so let's get closer to now. Other movies Goodfellas is just a crazy movie with all sorts of organized crime-based bad behavior portrayed by really good actors and directed by Scorsese, which there's a tracking shot at the beginning at the Copacabana that is just awesome, and it's just got a lot of scenes that are awesomely filled with tension and also just ridiculous, goofy mafia behavior. But if you want a modern equivalent of Goodfellas, because Goodfellas has to be 20 years or more old now, watch I, Tonya, which is kind of that same attitude transferred to the world of figure skating. Lance?
You know, I just want to say something, okay? Now, my yelling today, I was kind of just being theatrical. I wasn't really mad at Rick. I was just, sometimes like tonight I was just yelling to be funny. But I do want to ask you a question, Rick. And I know we're not supposed to go over this, but I'm serious now. This is dead serious. I've presented you with these horrifying scandals under Clinton and the FBI. And the Congress is involved, and there's memos, and I've read them. I've read them with my own eyes. It's not a fantasy. And honestly, I'm just asking you as a man, you don't seem the slightest bit impressed with any of this.
Well,
how can you be so unmoved?
Well, all right, let me, because you present arguments that you've heard on conservative media.
But I also have the documents. I've read them.
But here's the
I read the original sources.
I read
the
some
memo,
of them
I read
too.
the dossier.
Yeah, all right, I read some of them too, and I'm kind of an empiricist based on what I absorb now. All right, maybe you can call being an empiricist kind of being sloppy, but let's take a look. Here's how I think about stuff.
Okay.
All right. So Bill Clinton, probably rapey, certainly banged a lot of women who weren't his wife. If it were now and he were president, he'd be in deep shit. At the time, it all seemed like, to me, because I wasn't paying attention, because I wasn't doing this frickin' show, it seemed a lot like noise. And so maybe that's no excuse, but given the choice between, and I've always liked Hillary, and maybe that makes me more willing to forgive her sticking with Bill, even though Bill was at worst a rapist. All right, so no, I'm just saying how I think.
God's sake. I mean, it's actually worse than I thought. Because if you really believe he did these things, I mean, the guy should be in jail by your estimation. I frankly don't even know. There was never a trial.
The last time Bill Clinton was president was 17 years ago. And, you know, I was frickin' trying to have a career, and I was not giving that much of a shit.
No, but I'm just wondering, all these things I'm saying about the FBI and the memos and the dossiers,
Uranium One.
None of this is true. You never even heard this guy. You never even heard of Douglas Campbell.
No, I heard there was a guy.
Until right now, and you've already decided he's lying.
That's not true. I knew there was a guy who testified.
And you're sure he's lying?
No, I didn't.
How can you be so sure?
You can't interrupt me and put lies in my mouth.
Okay.
I'm saying that he was found to be an unreliable witness in an unrelated case. And I've said that now like 5 times.
But why do you let that? This
Because
is an unrelated case. He just spent 2 days speaking before the Congress for 16 hours. How can you be so sure that he's lying? How do you even know what the other case was?
you keep saying over and over that I'm sure that he's lying. Quit putting fucking words in my mouth. I'm not sure that he's lying. I am sure, because I've said it now like 8 times in the past fucking 90 minutes, that uranium one is complicated and people should read about the whole fucking thing on their own. And now there may have been, I have no doubt about this, that the Clinton Foundation was run sloppily and non-defensively. Now, you and I learned to drive at the same time. When we learned to drive in the 70s, it was drive defensively. Look out for the other guy, right? Remember that slogan?
Yeah, I remember.
All right. Now, I've been surprised since we've been doing this show and I've been forced to examine the Clintons' behavior, how undefensive they are and have been, given that they know that the Republicans will scrutinize whatever they do, right? I mean, here they've been scrutinized their entire political life, yet they still kind of do what they will do without, worrying too much about how it might be taken by the opposition. And just to give you one example, they apparently spent $3 million on Chelsea Clinton's wedding, which is like, now, I assume they have $3 million to spend on it of their own money, rather than Clinton Foundation money. But it seems to me pretty effing dumb and non-defensive, not watching out for the opposition, to spend $3 million on a wedding, when you're going to be held accountable for that at some point in the future because you're going to run for president in the future. It's like, don't do that. Don't be sloppy. The whole server thing indicates a certain level of not thinking about how things will look, which equals, in my mind, to carelessness. Now, it's not jailable carelessness in my liberal mind, but it's like, come on, just like cover your asses. And I would guess with uranium one that there may be just sloppiness and not looking at how things can look. Like Bill Clinton takes $500,000 to give a speech from Roscam or something. I guess that's more or less true. It's like, do you really want to do that? Get $500,000 for your foundation or for you? I forget what, It's like maybe they needed somebody on their staff to say, a visuals officer to say, this could be made to look like shit. Maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but in 2015 and 2016 when your wife is running for president. Maybe just like, don't be so sloppy. So I don't think there is, in my mind, based on what I've read and what I think is a liberal-ish person, I think there was sloppiness. Now, you can criticize me and say I've been brainwashed, but you wanted to know what I think, and you don't need to. You don't need to say your points again. I'm just saying I think they were sloppy. I don't think they were.
How can you be so sure that Trump colluded with the Russians then?
What I keep saying is wait and see, because we're waiting on Mueller, and Trump to me seems like, I've been familiar with Trump for decades, ever since, at the latest, since Spy Magazine called him a short-fingered vulgarian in the 90s or late 80s.
Okay, listen, I'm just reasoning with you here. I'm not yelling. I'm just asking for my own information.
Yeah.
it seems to you that Trump's the kind of guy that colluded with the Russians, given a feeling you have. But given everything I've said, all the dossiers, the things I've read, you can't bring yourself to say that maybe the Clintons really did take a bribe. That's just that's too hard for you to believe.
I don't think they did. I think they may have been sloppy.
Just not the kind of people that would do that. You know, when they left the White House, the Clintons were broke. Did you know that?
I know, and then they made a bunch of money off of speeches.
$240 million since they left the White House. $240 million since they left the White House. Mm-hmm. You can't give that many speeches, Rick.
Well,
he didn't give that many speeches. We know that.
No, they wrote some books. They made some money off of books.
$240 million?
So, which you could argue it the other way, which is, if you're bringing in that much money, why would you risk compromising yourself by taking bribes on top of it?
Maybe that's how you're getting the money.
If you can make 200 grand or 500 grand for giving a speech, why would you frickin' take bribes?
No, but that's not where they got the money. It wasn't from speeches. It couldn't have been. I mean, doesn't it make you just a little bit curious as to how they got the $240 million?
No, I've given this analogy before. When I buy gray market drugs from India, I don't worry that they're counterfeit because they make so much more money selling me a pill for $1 that they sell in Calcutta for 3 cents. That it would be dumb for them to jeopardize their standing by counterfeiting the pills. And it would be dumb for the Clintons to take bribes when they're bringing in so much money through non-illicit activities. Now, and there's this saying that I've said a zillion times, which is never attribute to malice what you can account for through stupidity. And
now we just happen to have an FBI informant that says they were taking bribes, and you're not the slightest bit impressed by that. A guy that risked his life doing deep cover.
Yeah, a paid informant, a lobbyist.
Well, he was paid by the FBI.
Yeah, but
I mean, he was an employee of the FBI, so that's how he got paid. He wasn't being given money by evil people. He was put in that position by the FBI, by Mueller.
Here, let me tell you a story.
Yeah, let's hear a story.
One of the bars I worked at in the 80s would pay a $5 bounty for fake IDs. Mm-hmm. I loved to catch fake IDs. And I'd catch fake IDs and I'd take them away from people, and sometimes I'd wrestle them because the Colorado IDs were made out of polyester at the time, and they were really good for wrestling and tussling with. I'd grab one end of the fake ID or the borrowed ID, and I'd drop to the ground, and I'd make them. Then there's the person who wanted the ID back desperately is trying to lift me and the ID off the ground. I turned in my fake IDs, and I was always getting beaten by other people.
Physically beaten?
No, by the other bouncers. They turned in more fake IDs than me. And I was like, how can this be? I worked harder to catch fake IDs than anybody else. Yet, week after week, I get beaten. And eventually found out that there was a scam with the head bouncer and some of the other bouncers. They were recycling fake IDs. They had a stack of IDs, because I went through the records eventually, because I like statistics. And I asked for permission to see, how can we improve our performance? When I eventually became head doorman, I found out that the previous head doorman was ripping off my place of employment. And by turning in the same fake IDs over and over again, week after week, for the $5 bounty, and this just made me so infuriated that I went over to the DMV and I jumped in their dumpster. And I grabbed handfuls of shredded IDs. Because when you get a new ID, you turn in your old ID and then they put it through the shredder. They only would cut the IDs into like 4 parts. I took the shredded IDs and I reassembled them under sheets of clear plastic. And I I turned them in as fake IDs because I wanted my $5 illicitly too.
Perfectly understandable.
And so if I'm a paid informant, I get paid for bringing people stories, you know, maybe the pay is a corrupting influence.
Well, he did get paid to work for the FBI. That was his job.
Yeah.
And they said to him, you're going to have to risk your life going undercover in Putin's Russia, where he kills people if they don't play ball with him over these business deals, because hundreds of millions of dollars are at stake. And you just assume this is like, it's just on the take, huh?
Well, what I gotta say is read the articles.
Yeah,
where
but
people...
given the odds, you're a math guy. He risks his life for $50,000. So he's probably doing that because he's on the take, or he's telling the truth. He's been working for the FBI for 10 years. He goes undercover, he comes back, he tells the Congress for 16 hours, I have proof in paper and verbal that Hillary, he's got paperwork, he kept notes, he kept paperwork, he kept documents,
So wait,
that
so
Clinton got bribed. And your assumption is, guy's on the take.
I'm just saying...
What are the odds? Play the odds for me, Rick.
Well, it's hard to play the odds because there's a lot of, you know, there's Bayesian logic.
Yes.
Okay, there's Bayesian statistics where you set the probability before you get the data. But Bayesian statistics allows you to, includes the deal that you may not know what the odds are. I don't have enough information to... All I can do is tell you to read. There's an article in the Daily Mail. There's a Reuters article on this guy's test. Read all the articles on this guy.
I'm just curious why you give him no credibility.
Because other people have given him no credibility. His testimony has been thrown out of other cases for not being sufficiently credible.
But that happens with everybody.
So what? Everybody has their testimony?
I had a case thrown out of court myself.
Because your testimony wasn't credible?
Because
No.
they didn't believe they didn't believe we had a case.
Because the judge just didn't find your testimony not credible. He found that the law, his interpretation of the law.
Right.
Yeah, but that's
what
not.
I'm saying is,
He didn't find you incredible.
Why is it that you're so willing to believe that this man, the FBI didn't throw his testimony out, they gave it to the president.
1 minute.
All right, so anyway.
Valentine's Day shout out.
The FBI believed.
Valentine's Day shout out to my wife who makes good cookies, who walks 10 miles a day, who has tolerated me for, 27 years of marriage and 5 years before that. No Valentines for this guy who keeps hammering home the same points, even though I say, read the Reuters article on William Douglas Campbell. Read the article from The Hill, from the Daily Mail, Snopes, and like a dozen other places. Just read it.
Lance, any Valentine's Day shut up?
Nope.
Okay, are we done? We're done.
We still got like 15 seconds.
All right, hey, listen, get your friends to subscribe to this thing.
Wait a minute,
Subscribe.
I've got a Valentine's Day thing.
Subscribe to our thing.
So all those women out there, I hope you burn in hell for what you did to me.
That's weird. All right, bye, everybody, bye. Subscribe! That's enough, right? Really? There's still more time? You keep saying...
God will get you for what you did to me. That's my Valentine.
No, don't keep saying misogynistic stuff. You think it's funny, but it just comes across as creepy.